these ward missionaries who are prospective missionaries, they're getting almost like a year-round mission prep course, but they're getting in the trenches work.
Yeah.
Where they're going into these homes, they're expected to give a lesson. They do give a lesson, and they get the feeling of knocking on a door, waiting for someone to answer, the anxiety of walking into the home and saying a prayer, and then working hand in hand with their companion to give a lesson to these members.
Wow.
And sometimes it takes 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes a half an hour. Sometimes there's more questions and more discussion, but it gives the ability for these prospective missionaries, these young men and young women, to be entrenched in missionary work before they even hit the field. And I've gotten feedback from some of our youth where they're saying, Bishop, this is so cool. Like, I thought when I got on my mission, I wasn't going to be able to talk to anybody. I didn't think I could do it.
Welcome back to the Leading Saints podcast. I'm excited that we got in the studio Greg Trimble, who actually owns the studio. You may not realize this, but this studio that I use as much as I can, at least for the in-person interviews, is in the basement of a business called Lemonade Stand. And they're so gracious in allowing us to use the studio. And Greg is the owner of that business and is also a phenomenal bishop. And as we talked, we're good friends. We talked about different ideas, leadership concepts. He shared a revolutionary approach that he's been using with his youth, with his ward mission, as far as how to engage the youth and help better prepare them for missionary service by allowing them to visit and teach different families in their ward. And he goes through all the nuts and bolts of it, how it's set up. And I think you'll be inspired, especially if you're looking for a unique way to engage the youth in your ward, calling them as ward missionaries and giving them specific assignments, coordinated by the ward mission leader. And it is a phenomenal interview. Definitely listen till the end and you'll be inspired. So here's my interview with Greg Trimble. All right, today I'm welcoming in Greg Trimble to his own studio here. Most people don't realize this. They probably think, oh, that's a cool studio that Kurt has in his basement. But it's not in my basement. It's in Greg's basement, his work basement, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And this is Lemonade Stand. This is your company, your baby. Here, right? And you let podcasters like me rent this out and create some good content. So,
the best.
Nice.
So glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to finally bring you down here and talk with you. We've been
This is round two.
Yes, this is round two. Mm-hmm. It was several years ago that I think we interviewed you about your experience as Sunday school president. And you were in Southern California at the time.
That's right.
So we'll link to it so they can get even a more perspective of yours. So
No.
Now, early on, I feel like you had sort of this personal brand as like a blogger. But is that still the case? I mean, you're a writer, but...
Yeah, I wrote a lot. I blogged a lot. I haven't been blogging lately. I've been very busy. And so I write a lot more infrequently now. But yeah, I used to write a lot. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Writing content is hard.
I know.
And it takes time. And it also got kind of stressful with the amount of...
the trolls out there?
Yeah, I mean, the internet's a crazy place.
It is, right? You put an opinion out there and somebody will always tell you that you're going to end civilization because you would think that way, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I love writing. I started it just because I wanted to try to share the gospel online because I ran out of people to talk to in my area in Southern California and thought, I know what to do with the internet and search engine optimization and all that. And so I tried to share it with as many people as I could. Yeah,
that's awesome. And you've written several books that have come out of that writing. So people see your name in popular church bookstores, right?
Yeah.
So now you've been a bishop for how long now?
It's almost 4 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just about to land the plane.
Getting close. Yeah.
Nice. And what's that? I mean, just thinking back on those 4 years, just generally speaking, what's that experience been like for you?
It's been amazing. It's been humbling. It's been stressful at times and exhilarating at times. And I've just been so grateful to work with the people. Honestly, the people in our ward, like there's a million other people that could serve in that capacity. I'm not sure why I am, but the people in our ward are so good and it makes it a lot easier than it might be otherwise.
Yeah.
But I get to work with amazing people, and it makes it great.
Right. And now you're no longer in Southern California. You are in Utah now.
Yeah.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, we moved to Utah about 5 years ago, and have been loving it ever since.
Nice.
It's a little less crowded.
A little less, right? Yeah. Now, what do you remember from like the first 6 months or so? Like just certain expectations you had walking that calling, and then, I mean, if you were to go back in time, those 4 years, and talk to yourself in those first 6 months, like what comes to mind first about what you've learned? Yeah,
I actually had somebody ask me that on a golf course. And it was a younger brother, and he asked me, he said, what's the most important thing you've learned as serving as a bishop? Same question. And it boiled down to three things. And those three things were, the very first one, everybody's dealing with something. Everybody has something really tough that they're dealing with. I know President Irene once talked about, I don't know the exact quote, but he said, hey, everyone you see, assume that 50% of them are going through a catastrophic issue in their life. And I actually feel like that might even be higher, with the amount of things that are going on in the world. But that was the first thing, is everybody is dealing with something, and it's so important to just be kind and understanding and not judgmental, judge not according to appearance.
Yeah.
And so that was the first one. And then the second one was that wickedness never was happiness. I've never seen anybody that I've talked to that they were happy about making decisions that impacted others or themselves in a negative way. And then the third one was that Christ is the solution to every problem. Mm-hmm. So those three things I've just seen over and over again since I started. As far as what expectations I had, going into it, I knew it was going to be difficult, and it has been difficult, but it's also been really rewarding to see people change and get better and have a desire to get better, and to see the way that they serve each other behind the scenes without anybody really knowing. Oftentimes, it's just been so exciting to watch the goodness in people.
Yeah. Now, would you frame it as a pretty typical Utah ward, or how would you describe the demographics or the makeup of your ward?
I don't think it's a typical Utah ward. I think that there's a lot of people that have served in various leadership capacities in that ward. And they've moved from various places, to be there from all around the country. A lot of them have come from California and the East Coast and all over. And it's sort of like a melting pot of really cool people.
Nice. Which,
it has kind of helped in the direction of some of the things that we've done inside that ward, actually.
Wow. Yeah. So youth is obviously always the priority of a bishop. Is that, is it a heavy youth program, like a lot of youth, or how would you describe that?
We've got about 60 youth.
Okay.
And so it's a good size youth program, and they're all amazing. I love them. If they ever listen to this someday, I hope they know how much I love them. But it's been amazing working with them. Again, we have the best Elders Quorum presidency and Relief Society presidency, and everybody does so much to help and support with the youth. And so I really have been, it's as designed, I've really been able to just spend a lot of time with the youth.
So take me to like the typical Sunday morning. You wake up, and obviously there's, scheduled meetings and appointments and things, but like, how do you show up in that calling? I mean, how do you keep your mindset straight, or, how do you walk into that day? Because it can kind of just swallow you whole at times.
Yeah.
Right? So does anything come to mind with that?
Yeah. This is kind of funny. On Saturday night, I start getting I get worried that I want to make sure I wake up. I never don't. I always wake up.
Yeah. You never slept in?
When the sun comes up, I feel like I'm up early without an alarm, but there's always that thing in the back of your head, like, what if I don't wake up? So I'm always asking my wife to set her alarm, and I'm gonna set my alarm. And so there is a little bit of anxiety going into Sunday night. I felt that in another calling as a seminary teacher down in California, where it was like Sunday night, I felt going into Monday was like, oh my goodness, like this is a lot. And sometimes looking at your day and the schedule and all the things you got ahead of you, it can get overwhelming. But sometimes I just say, gosh, I got to do my best today and get through this day if it looks like a hard day, and then try to make the best of it. But that's really my approach, is just to say, I just want to do my best. I want to give it all. I want to give it my all until I'm released, so that I can look back and say I did everything that I could for the people that I served.
Yeah. And that sort of is that benefit of knowing that there's a sunset to these callings, saying, in this period of time, I don't have to give it all in this way for 30 years or 40 years, but for 5, for 6, I could probably do that, and really make a difference until I pass the baton.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Now I would like classify you as like you're, what's the word? Like a thought leader in the world of the Latter-day Saint world. You're quite involved with Faith Matters. They also record their podcast just around the corner there. Yeah. And you're involved with the Millennial Choir and Orchestras. Maybe just give us if people don't know what that is, give us the pitch or the explanation of that.
Yeah, you're talking for Millennial Choirs and Orchestras, or okay. Yeah. They are, an organization that does things that I could never even dream of doing. They make the most amazing music, and most of the organization are members of the church. And so they are creating music that youth from age 4 all the way up to professional musicians and a professional orchestra are coming together and playing arrangements of hymns and composed music. Some of the best I've ever heard in the entire world.
Incredible.
And they come together, and their testimonies grow together through music. And I wrote a book about this concept, and I'm not a musician, so it took me a long time to try to delve into that world. But it's just so neat to watch. I feel like I watch the atonement manifest itself as they get onto a stage, because you've got people, all these different instruments playing a different sound. If they all played independently of one another, it just wouldn't sound good. And then they all come together and they play this movie, or they play this score, and it comes together, and it's just magical. So I've loved that, and loved the mission that they have as they help strengthen testimonies.
Right. Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to attend a concert, and it's impactful. And leaving that, I really feel like, it's one of those things like, there's always the popular musical that tours, right? Like Hamlet, if Hamlet comes to your town, spend the money, or make sure you get there and see it. This is like, if you ever have the opportunity to experience Millennial Choir and Orchestras, get there, make it a priority, because it is impactful when you experience it. For sure. Yeah. And even to the point that my kids have joined the choir, and it's like, you just want to be a part of that spirit of it. And so, they're going to have a great
where's
time. It a good home base to learn more about them and their tours and things?
It's just millennial.org.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool. Millennial.org. You could link to it.
And your book's available there too, about their journey and their history. It's cool. Yeah. Awesome. So going back to that, my point being is that you're my type of leader, where I just love the person who sits back and says, how can I just make this better? Whether it's being part of this or that organization, or even how I lead a ward, right? And so I'm intrigued to listen and learn about your experience as a bishop and things you've done. I don't know how long ago you wrote this article, and we'll link to it. It's on your website, the future of missionary work. How long ago did you write that?
It was probably 6 months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
what's the story? Like, you woke up one day and you're like, you got to get these ideas out, or how did this come about? Yeah,
it was kind of an organic thing that took place. In our area, there's not a ton of what you would say traditional missionary work going on, right? It's not like and I'll just try to speak openly about, it's not like what you would consider like a high baptizing area. And so missionaries, when they go there, they often have a hard time, because there's, people moving in and out. There's a lot of tourism, and it's just a hard time for missionaries. And then those missionaries, and again, they're great missionaries trying to keep the mission rules. There are mission rules that they need to abide by, and they do. And what happens is, a lot of the people in their area, if they've moved from other places where the missionaries were traditionally in their house on a regular basis, they might have been having dinner with them. They might be having a discussion with them, sharing a scripture with them. And what I found was that there were a lot of our members missed that interaction because the missionaries bring a special spirit into a home. It's just different. No matter what missionary it is, they walk in and it's just different. And it was always special to my kids. And I know it's been special to other youth to have the missionaries walk into their home and just spend some time with them. And so, because of various, how things are in various areas, missionaries aren't really allowed to spend a whole lot of time in the homes of members unless they bring, a friend, formerly an investigator, into the home to be taught. And so it makes, because that's not always an option, because that doesn't happen all that often, they haven't been able to have those interactions. And so what we've done is we've created sort of a mini mission in our ward where we've called most of our older youth, both young men and young women, to be missionaries, to be ward missionaries in our area. And they would meet with our ward mission leader, and our ward mission leader is an amazing teacher. And he would sort of act as sort of like a mini, mission leader in this mission. And instead of just a traditional ward mission leader that often doesn't get enough time to do missionary work and spend that time doing what that calling is supposed to do, he's actually working with these youth. They spend some time going over a lesson, learning the discussions, learning lessons. And then they go out into the ward. They go to families that are, maybe they have primary age kids, or maybe they have youth aged kids. We start there and then we go up from there, and they go out 2 by 2 and they go into the homes of the members of our ward as missionaries, and they share a lesson as if they were giving a missionary lesson. And the result, the benefit has been twofold. The members of our ward have felt that spirit come back into their home by having missionaries come in and share these basic but powerful and simple truths of both the plan of salvation and the restoration. And then secondly, these ward missionaries who are prospective missionaries, they're getting almost like a year-round mission prep course, but they're getting in the trenches work. Yeah. Where they're going into these homes, they're expected to give a lesson. They do give a lesson, and they get the feeling of knocking on a door, waiting for someone to answer, the anxiety of walking into the home and saying a prayer, and then working hand in hand with their companion to give a lesson to these members. Wow. And sometimes it takes 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes a half an hour. Sometimes there's more questions and more discussion, but it gives the ability for these prospective missionaries, these young men and young women, to be entrenched in missionary work before they even hit the field. And I've gotten feedback from some of our youth where they're saying, Bishop, this is so cool. Like, I thought when I got on my mission, I wasn't going to be able to talk to anybody. I didn't think I could do it. And now they're saying, oh my gosh, I just had this amazing discussion with this family and they're so excited. And I felt like I could articulate myself, and I learned this scripture and I used this, and to see the excitement on their faces, and then to also see the members of the ward get excited by having those youth come into their home. It breeds connection in the ward. Number one, that's the biggest problem I hear is a lack of connection nowadays. When in this internet age where everybody's connected, a lack of connection. So we're fixing that between the youth and the adults and the families. But at the same time, we're also helping them be able to become missionaries before they even hit the field. So it's been a really incredible experience to do that. And we're trying to help them to feel the impact of service too, and to know that they can be successful even if they don't go into their mission and have a bunch of baptisms, that there's different nuances and different missions all throughout the world, and to work on themselves and to serve their companions and to serve the families in the area, and to build the reputation of the church and leave a mark on whatever area they go to, regardless of the numbers that they output, right? We want the focus to be focus on the number of people that you serve versus, some of the other metrics that are very important and they represent people, but sometimes it's hard to control, some of those other metrics. You can always control how many people you serve.
Yeah.
Because they're everywhere.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. As far as, so you have a ward mission leader, and he is sort of the leader of this.
Yeah, of the word missionaries.
Of the word missionaries.
It's pretty similar how it's always been started.
Right,
similar
exactly.
as not changing anything.
So, and these word missionaries, are they always involve youth, or it's a mix of everybody?
They involve youth and a few adults.
Okay.
But primarily youth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 youth would set an appointment with someone in the ward to just stop by for a visit and teach a lesson.
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
They spend some time after church right now, spending about 20 minutes going over the lesson that they would teach out of Preach My Gospel on that given day.
Yeah.
And then they make an assignment of like, okay, this family needs a visit, and then
and that family has already been approached, and they're expecting them to show up, right?
Ward mission leader kind of sets up the appointments, and then they send them to where they're going to go.
Now, and this isn't like an MTC role play that we did. Like they're just going in. They're not pretending that they're investigating the church. They're just they're learning.
They're real discussions in these homes, because, I mean, the odds are there's a lot of primary age kids and maybe even some youth and probably even some adults, that it's been a really long time before someone has gone into their home as a missionary and borne a sincere testimony about aspects of the plan of salvation and aspects of the restoration, and their testimonies of those events surrounding those big principles and historical, monumental events that we have in our life. It's been a really long time since they've heard that.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
So with these youth that are involved, are they being sustained as ward missionaries then to do this, or is it just sort of part of the youth experience?
They're sustained as ward missionaries.
Okay.
Yeah. We call them as ward missionaries. We sustain them in sacrament meeting, and they're set apart as ward missionaries. And it's as close to a mission that I think they can get to before they hit the MTC. But man, they're going to be so prepared.
Yeah. Just the simple nuances of these things that I remember, it's hard to train for, because, I'm sitting in someone's, how do I small talk? How do I warm up the conversation, actually jump into to the content? Right?
Yeah. How do they switch between, how do they make it a natural flow between conversation? How do they answer questions properly? How do they respond if they don't know the answer to the question? How do they respond if they feel challenged or embarrassed or whatever? I mean, there's so many different details, things that you don't learn until you're a year out in your mission. So the goal is when they hit their mission, they can hit the ground running. Yeah. Because, 3 weeks, a week or so in the MTC, it's great, but having that real world experience of teaching and feeling the anxiety that is associated with going into these new situations, learning how to deal with that, I think is just critical to their success and to the longevity of their testimonies, that they can come home from their mission feeling valuable, feeling like they did something worthwhile, and that they become more converted themselves, and that they help their companions and others. That's the goal. Yeah.
Anything to say as far, where does the content or the lessons come from? Does the ward mission leader simply come up with random topics? Is he using
right out of Preach My Gospel?
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. They study out of Preach My Gospel. They have the lesson, they review it. They look at relevant scriptures out of Preach My Gospel that apply to the lesson. And then they go in and they deliver their message. And then either the family has some questions or they don't. And they go from there.
Yeah. So these could last 30 minutes to an hour type of thing. And a nice visit. So is it connected at all with the ministering effort, or is that just sort of its own thing going on?
Yeah. I mean, the Elders Quorum and Relief Society, they really do a great job with, managing that for the ward and leading out there. I definitely believe this is a form of ministering. I actually think it's one of the most effective forms, because people are excited. Families, adults, they're really excited when two young men or two young women, ages 16 to 18, come knocking at their door and saying, hey, can we just share a message? People are a lot more receptive to that.
Yeah.
You know, if it's somebody else, this is their neighbor coming, trying to do their ministering. Obviously we hope that everyone's doing their ministering and coming in and doing their best on that.
Right.
But it's a different feeling when a couple 16, 18-year-olds knock on your door and say, we just want to share something with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine, I mean, I love these things because in the long term, it just shifts the culture of the ward completely, where a youth that's engaging with another, a couple in the ward that maybe they are not youth leaders, but they suddenly have this connection. They'll see them in the hallway like, oh, hey, how are you? Like There's that connection that's already established because of this simple visit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When wards get shifted and shaken up and boundaries get changed and even just if not, one of the biggest things that I hear as sort of a, I don't know necessarily a complaint, but just feedback is that it feels like oftentimes the word can be disconnected, right? But that's because we live in an internet age, a video game age, a stay home and don't bother me age, a don't knock on my door, make sure you text me before you come over. I mean, all that stuff that was never, relevant back in the day. We wouldn't even imagine what we'd be living in right now. But a lot of isolation, a lot of those things that take place that I think is causing a lot of the issues that we see our youth facing today. A lot of those things are fixed, and we tried to create these different ways to get the adults, not just the youth leaders, but all of the adults throughout the entire ward to be invested in the future of these kids, invested in the future of these youth. So when they see them in the hallway, like you said, they're going to be like, hey, what's up? Like as that happens over time, they're going to start forming these bonds and this support and this love for one another. I think one of the most important things that youth can do is to not write off the old people, like I think that's the worst thing you could ever do. There's so many people that they might consider old that you're like, if you knew how much experience they have and how much they have to offer, and if you just could know that and listen to them for a little bit, it'd be so much better for the youth. And so we really tried to create that even on Sundays, where we bring some of the youth into Elders Quorum or Relief Society, and we have them do kind of a spotlight on their parents and vice versa.
Oh, cool.
So that they can, at the beginning of class or quorum, and they can begin to learn the names and the faces and the backgrounds and the interests and the hobbies and all those things. So there's just this revolving support that takes place on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's what really the biggest thing that we've tried to solve for is creating connections, meaningful connections that last a lifetime, so that anytime anybody walks in those doors at church, they're like, I'm home. I want to be here. These are my people, know?
Yeah. So all youth are called as Word Missionaries. Is that fair to say?
Most of them, and the 16 to 18-year-old group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're focused on the 16, 18-year-old group with this. And then the Word Mission leaders simply just rotating through those companionships. And every few weeks, an individual youth may go on a visit every few weeks or once a month, or
they go every week.
Oh, everybody goes every week. Okay. This is helpful.
They switch companionships. They might teach a family in succession for 3 or 4 lessons, and then they'll switch. And so they'll learn how to work with different companions, and they'll learn
they
how
may
to
visit the same home multiple in sequential weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Very good. Very good. And then this is more of a preparation experience. It's not like you're seeing baptisms coming out. That's not the point per se,
that's not the point, but it is. I always love, this analogy of like using sports, for instance. I mean, Karl Malone, one of the all-time leading scorers.
Right.
Would he have been that way without John Stockton?
Probably not.
Right?
The all-time assist leader, right?
And so I think we don't give enough credit to the assists. And I think it actually comes back to bite us when we are only focused on reaping the harvest instead of planting the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at it as a long-term vision of, if we strengthen our youth, they're going to do better on their missions. If we strengthen, imagine there's a family, and you'd like to believe that every single family has Come Follow Me going on in their home every week, and everyone's sitting in a circle and singing hymns, and everything's perfect, like the ideal situation of what we would hope. But honestly, is that really happening? Nobody knows that for sure. We don't have any way of measuring that, but I think it's possible that that's not always happening. And so imagine how many primary aged kids or youth aren't being taught those things. They're not, they might not have missionaries in their home, so they're not getting that example. They're not feeling that spirit. And so imagine one of our youth ward missionaries goes in there. My kids, mine and my wife's kids, they would look up to the missionaries come in, and they're like, oh my gosh, the missionaries are here. It's like, wow, missionaries. And so that's really the goal is to get them to say, man, I want to be like them. I want to serve God. I want to do those things. And that's really the goal is to get them, is to see the long-term versus the short-term. When it's short-term, like, oh, how many baptisms do we have in our area? Well, we didn't have any this month, or this transfer, or in 3 months or 6 months. Oh my gosh. Like, what's everybody doing wrong? It might just be the nuance of a different area. I mean, you could have one area that baptizes a lot, but then you could have one area that doesn't baptize a lot, but they plant a lot of seeds. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do really good at teaching their youth how to be great missionaries, and those missionaries go out into the world and then they baptize people. So I think seeing the whole picture and not just defining success by a baptism, defining success by how committed is somebody's heart to God and how willing are they to serve in whatever capacity and whatever area they come to. It might just be one. I mean, I love the Abinadi concept, right? He goes into this place. He might have thought he was a complete failure as he burns, and yet there was this one of the priests sitting there that's like, oh my gosh, I got to change. And then what happens to him? Alma goes, and then it starts this whole line. So Abinadi might have gone down thinking he was a failure, and maybe the leader in his area, you didn't have any baptisms, you didn't have any converts. Well, actually, yeah, I planted a seed. My example, I didn't get to see it, but that changed the course of the Book of Mormon. Yeah. I mean, draw a diagram of the effect of Abinadi. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And so I think that's really what I've hoped to try to do is, obviously, if there's people in the area, we want to teach them, we want to find them, we want to do our best to be a good example and find those people that are ready. But what I'm focused on is how to prepare the Abinadis that are going to go out there and change the world one little interaction at a time. Yeah. Yeah,
that's powerful. Is there any connection, interaction with the full-time missionaries in your area? Now, in Utah, one companionship may be assigned to multiple stakes. So yeah, it's not like we see him every week, but is there any connection point there, or this is mainly just focused on these ward missionary experiences?
Yeah, there's connection with the full-time missionaries, but you're exactly right. In Utah, it's a little bit different because oftentimes companionships are split between multiple stakes. You might see them, once every 6 weeks in your area or in your ward. And so the ward isn't able to develop as much of a relationship with those missionaries. But when we do see them, we try to integrate them, at mission prep or things like that. We try to integrate them. There was a time where they were spending a little bit of time in our stake, kind of doing some training with our youth, with our youth presidencies and ward missionaries, but there's not a ton of interaction. But that's because they're spread thin, and they also have, they have to be out proselyting, and it's hard for them to get into members' homes when they're busy, obviously doing important stuff. But I'm certain that the members that have moved from other areas, from California, from Arizona, from the East Coast, from wherever, they do miss that regular interaction with the full-time missionaries and the ability to build a relationship of trust with those members and the missionaries so that they feel more comfortable referring people.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is such an upstream approach where it's not necessarily maybe in your specific ward that it's, having this huge shift in like missionary work or whatever. But when these young men and women go on and serve their own mission, I mean, that those mission presidents probably want to kiss you. You're just like, thank you for taking the time to prepare them so that when they get out here, they can hit the ground running and be a more effective missionary. And then those badges, I mean, that's so impactful to think about that your ward in Utah is impacting wards in Peru and, in Europe and, all over the world because of
that.
This.
Is the exact point.
Yeah.
And sometimes in areas you feel like, oh man, the missionary work is stalled. And I know somebody somewhere is going to be like, well, you just need to do better missionary work. And maybe that's true.
Sure.
That's true. I'm totally open to that. But at the same time, until we figure that out, I do know what we have sitting right in front of us.
Yeah.
Which are a bunch of prospective missionaries that also in their life need to feel the impact of bearing their own testimonies and discovering their own testimonies and being out there with people and teaching them. And I honestly believe that there are some people out there in our ward or in our area that need to hear the testimony of these 16 to 18-year-olds deliver the message of the restoration, the first vision, the impact of the Book of Mormon, the atonement of Christ. They need to hear that message. They're members of the church, and they may be wavering. They may be sitting on the fence. They may be struggling, and they need to hear that testimony even more than somebody that is considered an investigator, a non-member, a friend, whatever that might be. I think of those people, that how badly they need that in their home. Yeah.
Yeah. My mind goes to I hear this story a lot where, I got in the MTC and I started learning about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. I kind of had this epiphany that I better really reflect on, do I believe this? Because I'm going to teach it. Do I believe this, right? So you're almost moving that up where just going through this exercise of articulating the story of Joseph Smith or, these principles that they teach, it kind of forces us in a place where I can't just say this. I'm going to engage in that journey and really know for myself and gain that testimony. It's powerful.
I've watched them go from not really thinking about any of this stuff to what scripture can I use in this situation?
Uh-huh.
How can I be more effective in teaching this principle? What chain of scriptures can I put together that helps me articulate this concept better? I mean, to watch their minds be invested in it is something that doesn't happen to missionaries until almost a year into their mission.
Yeah.
And sometimes ever. And so being able to do this with them in a controlled environment, to work with them and prepare them is, outside of a mission prep class, which is usually just a few weeks, and, hoping that they're getting that at home. It's just been probably the most exciting thing that I've seen while serving in this capacity. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about maybe those parents or youth leaders listening who are like, Greg, listen, I'm lucky enough to drag them to seminary and duct tape them in their seat.
Yeah.
And there's natural resistance with all teenagers, really all humans, but this, the resistance of, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Has that come up, or anything you would say to that?
I would say that I think that we live in an age where we don't expect enough out of the youth. I think that we live in an age where they're actually impacted by that inability of us to expect more from them and hold them to a higher bar. and say, you've been set apart as a word missionary. And this is not some arbitrary calling. It's not some waste of time that you're going into a home where somebody genuinely needs to hear you say what you're going to say. And they genuinely need to feel the spirit that you're going to bring, and the impact that you make could be life-changing for them, for their family, for their desire to serve a future mission, for the people that are impacted. So when you go into this, we want to make sure they understand how important it is. This is a calling. Most youth don't have callings outside of their youth presidencies. This is a calling in the ward. And you've been called to go out and preach the gospel to our ward members and to the primary age kids and to the youth. And so that's what I would say to that.
That's helpful.
I really do believe that much of the problems that we see nowadays is because of adults not expecting enough out of the youth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. Yeah, that's really helpful. So, 4 years into being bishop, how long has your ward been doing this effort?
It's been about 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at this point, I mean, obviously it's not something that you're coordinating. I mean, the ward mission leader is doing that. And so, I mean, at this point, the ward mission leader's doing it.
Yeah.
If somebody turns 16, a youth, you're making sure that calling gets extended, and then it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're identifying the youth. Some may not be in a position where they can or have a desire to do that. So we're trying to stay close to make sure that we extend that call, that there's inspiration involved, and that there's, that it's relevant to their situation, that it's a good thing for them, that they're capable of doing that. And so we try to stay real close to them to make sure that that's a good thing for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm really excited about this. I think this, again, just such a simple approach to really shift culture, infuse the word with some energy around that, build community, connection. I mean, it's just covers so many bases. So any other nuance or part of this that we haven't touched on, or would be helpful to explain?
Think we talked a little bit about this, but trying to help them understand. We talked about Abinadi, but we also talk about Ammon a lot. Where, do you remember when Ammon goes to this place? I mean, his background was tough. They're going on, what was it, like a 14-year mission? Ultimately ended up being about a 14-year mission before they saw each other again. And the attitude of Ammon going to an area, and he says, "I'm here to serve." And he says, "I'll be here for as long as it takes." He says, "Perhaps even until the day I die. I want to dwell among these people, and I want to serve them." And what made Ammon such a powerful missionary was that he didn't go in. People are smart nowadays. I mean, they were smart in all days, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with the internet and so much exposure to everything, that every religion does and everything that we do, Ammon went in there, and I think that's the way we need to approach missionary work, is that we need to go in there and not have anybody feel like we have a specific agenda of, I just want to come in here and I'll be your friend if I can baptize you. And if not, then good luck.
Right.
That we go in there with the attitude of, I'd love to teach you. I'd love to share our message with you, but I also want to serve you and help you in whatever way I possibly can, and bring you closer to Christ through my actions and through your actions. And to think of it that way, and I think it will open more doors if the ultimate aim is to be able to teach somebody and have them convert to Christ and to the gospel. I think that those doors get opened a lot faster and in greater abundance if we go into it as a servant, as a service person. I mean, I would love and hope for the day someday where all missionaries are considered service missionaries. Mm-hmm. There's no proselyting missionaries and then service missionaries. And if you get called as a service missionary, as much as people tell you that you shouldn't feel bad, they're still like, well,
the stigma's still there.
Am I like second rate because I didn't serve a proselyting mission? I wish every single missionary was considered a service missionary, And maybe in their respective areas, they have different roles and they have different commissions to go do. But every one of them goes out into the community, improves the reputation of the church, leaves a positive mark on whatever community they go to, builds trust among all the people of all different backgrounds, just by serving and loving and not asking questions, and doing that so well that all the people in that area want to ask those missionaries, who are you guys? What is your message?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then that's when somebody opens up and says, okay, now I'm receptive to what you have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so we're trying to teach that as well. I hope that that's okay. I don't know.
No,
but it feels scriptural to me, and it feels right. It feels right.
Yeah. I appreciate that, because I mean, I hate to take it to a secular example, but like, both of us know that, like, there's nothing more powerful in my professional success than my network. Mm-hmm. And that network has come from just casual interactions with people where they gave me a time to connect with them human to human, and even serve them, or just let them know who I am and see me as a human. And service has such a way to do that, that it builds that network that it would easily stimulate the baptism number, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
If that's the bottom line of it. As we build those relationships and people see us for who we are and the people that we're striving to be more and more Christ-like.
Yeah,
it's powerful.
I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
I think if we thought that way in continuity across the entire world, we might see a small little dip, but then we'd see an explosion of converts.
Right.
Because people will just say, I want that. Mm-hmm. I want to be there. I want to be with those people. They serve, they're happy, they stand out.
Yeah. And
then that's when they ask the questions. Now, how can I be a part of this? It's exactly the same thing Lamoni said, right? Mm-hmm. Where's Alma? He's feeding your horses. Of course he is. He's always serving. Bring him here. What are you all about? Well, okay, now that you asked, exactly. I'll tell you.
Yep.
And the minute he told him, it wasn't what Ammon said, it was the power of years of service and building a reputation of a servant and of service and love that was the converting power for King Lamoni. It wasn't just Ammon's words. Ammon's words wouldn't have meant anything if he came into the area and said, Lamoni, you need to repent. No, Ammon would have got thrown in prison, or whatever.
Right.
Could have been worse.
Thrown out of town.
Yeah. And so that principle is of seeing things in the long term. Like, I know we're hastening the work, but I don't see any other greater work to do. I don't see any other greater way to hasten the work than by serving people and loving them until they're ready. They'll ask questions when they're ready.
Right.
And so getting to that point is, I think.
So going
important.
back to this effort in your ward, is there a way that you highlight the service principle or work that in there, or how does that fit in? We talk about it.
Definitely, I talk about it with the youth. Our ward missionary is oriented that way. He's so good. He's such a great teacher. We have another couple in there, a brother and a sister, that are also amazing at that and are great teachers and illustrate those concepts of teaching and service and all that. So while they're both teaching messages out of Preach My Gospel, they're also learning concepts of service and the long term.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, any other point, principle, concept that we missed, or?
I don't think so.
All right.
I think it's a pretty
really helpful.
It's pretty straightforward concept. I don't think it's, ingenious in any way. There's already a ward missionary program there. Right, yeah. It's just like sometimes what's happening in the ward missionary program, and I think it gets pretty stale and pretty stagnant. And so I thought, man, that's really a way to energize that by putting and get the most out of it. And actually has become one of the most exciting things in our ward.
Especially for like the really saturated areas of Idaho, Utah, Arizona, where, we call these ward mission leaders and, they want to do a good job. But at the same time, it's like, especially in Utah, it's like, okay, we got 10 homes in our ward that aren't members. They've heard it. They get it, and what else do I do? They kind of can feel dismissed a little bit. So what a great way to to help them be a part of an effort, a movement in the world that's really energizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think some of the greatest missionary work, and what we might say is the greatest harvest, are by people whose names are already on the records of the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, is there anywhere you would point people if they want to read more of your writing, your books, or, I mean, is that a focus right now? Or?
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you got to go to my blog, but it's.
Yeah, and you did. We'll reference this. The future of missionary work. We'll reference that, which is on your blog.
Yeah.
Right. We'll plug Faith Matters, of course. We'll plug Millennial Choir and Orchestra. Yeah. So there's just so many awesome efforts out there that people need to be aware of. So, all right. Last question I have for you, Greg, is as you reflect on your time as a bishop.
Yeah.
How has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
That's a great question. So I think the greatest leader ever was Jesus Christ. And everything that I do, whether it's the most important work for me, which is being a good husband and a good father, and then obviously fulfilling these callings, trying to magnify those callings, I feel Jesus Christ has to be the center of each of those roles. And in any way that I lead, I want to lead the way that he led. And so I think as I push myself and as I try to learn and observe, I also think that the best leaders are actually the best followers in the way that they choose the right people to follow, and they become a greatest hits of the people around them. They take the good and apply it. They take the bad and discard it until they become this greatest hits of these people around them. I think in doing that and then studying the teachings of Christ and trying to live the way that he lived, I've tried to lead that way. And then by leading that way, I think it deepens my conviction, because I see the results and see the joy that comes from that. It deepens my love and devotion to the Savior. So I think in the process of leading, I'm becoming a better follower. I hope, at least.